I hadn't really noticed, but did you get a new?
Yeah, I got this like cheap little mic.
Nice. All right, so it looks like we are live. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Awakening Consciousness with Asher and Jesse. Glad to be back with the two of us. I think it's been like a week since we both recorded one. We both did interviews separately, but haven't done one together in about a week or so. And since then, we have a new boogeyman that we all need to be afraid of, and that is snake venom. So a quote unquote documentary was sent around. It's going around all the truth channels. I can't remember how many people shared it with me, and it's been shared with me / the team a bunch of times, or a bunch of people have sent it in, and they're asking, oh, do we need to be scared of snake venom? Now, they're putting snake venom in the water. All these things are pointing to that it's snake venom. And so we're going to be talking about that. And obviously the title of this episode is they're putting fluoride in the water, not snake venom. And so water fluoridation shouldn't be news to anyone here, but we're going to be showing a little bit about that, and discussing some initial thoughts on the It's in the Water documentary, quote unquote documentary, put out by Stu Peters and Brian Arden, I think is his name. So that's the show for today. I'm not sure if this one will be allowed to stay up on YouTube, so please like, share, and subscribe, but especially over on Rumble. We're going to put links to that in the chat. And so anything to add before we get started?
No, man, I'm good to be back. I'm glad to be here. We only got 45 minutes, so we're gonna hit it. We'll see how it goes. Missed you, Asher. Great to see your face. I got a new microphone. We'll see if it works. and let's go.
All right. So yesterday, or was it yesterday, the day before? So one of those days, I get people emailing me this quote unquote documentary put out by Stu Peters and this other guy, Brian Arden, I think his name was, something like that. And they are essentially making the case that it's the snake venom in the water, and also I think in the injections, that is actually causing people to get sick. And when I first started watching it, the very first thing I noticed was the music that they're playing in the background. And it has this sort of, dun dun dun, that music that they played is put there for a specific purpose, and that is to get you into a fear state. So even as I watched it, and even as I know that they've never isolated anything, they've never isolated a particle or anything from anybody and shown that it's getting people sick. Particles from snake venom, viruses, anything like that. They've never isolated anything and shown a causal relationship between that person and getting someone sick. They've never done it. So I know that from the baseline. And so what they're doing in the documentary is playing scary music and then making pretty significant leaps in logic to be able to show that it's, venom from a snake, a king cobra, because, they break down the word coronavirus in the Latin, I think the Latin and Greek definitions of the word. And, it could be the Pope virus is this thing, or it could be Pope venom, or it could be king cobra venom, a bunch of different definitions of the word. And then they also talk about the various drug cocktails that are being used to treat this, and how, they've outlawed monoclonal antibodies, and they're pushing remdesivir and all that stuff. And I'm not saying that they're wrong about the dangers and the dangers of remdesivir and some of the other drugs that they're using to treat this, but their conclusion that it must be snake venom that's getting people sick, I think, is it's a stretch, to say the least, and relies on a lot of leaps in faith in the logic, when there's many other, it could be snake venom and it could be many other things, and they conclude that it's snake venom for a variety of reasons. And so I just wanted to say it's not snake venom, and they're actually putting fluoride in the water. So you do need to be careful about the water that you drink, but not because there's snake venom in it, because there's fluoride, there's pharmaceuticals and other toxins and poisons in the water, and that's the real concern that we should have about the drinking water, but it's not the cause of quote unquote COVID-19.
Yeah. All right, just wrapping up this bite here. I think I'm ready to talk. So yeah, I mean, I didn't watch this yet, so I watched about 15 minutes of it, half asleep last night before I went to bed. And it's interesting, right? The first thing that I noticed as well, I wouldn't have described it as fear music, but again, I was half asleep. I would describe it as like emotion music, almost like sentimental emotion, try to get you, to get you sort of like a movie would do, right? In a sentimental or emotional type scene. So I noticed that as well. I also saw some jumps in logic. Again, I'm only 15, maybe 20 minutes in at the most. And I don't even know what the conclusion is. Did you watch it through?
Yeah, I watched it through.
And so basically they're saying that they're putting this stuff in the water and that's getting people sick.
Yeah, in the water. And
because the first 15, 20 minutes seem to be
also in the injections.
Right. The first 15, 20 minutes seem to be focused on remdesivir, whatever that drug is called. So they hadn't.
And they're not wrong about that. Yeah, right, they're not wrong about remdesivir. I mean, and this was the same playbook that they used for AIDS. A bunch of people were getting sick for a variety of reasons. They roll out Fauci, and he gives them, AZT, and that's the approved medication for treating quote unquote AIDS. A lot of people get even more sick and die, and then you have this, scare that lasts like a decade. And there's, like with the coronavirus, they've never isolated or purified an AIDS virus, or an HIV virus, and shown that it causes AIDS. And so it's the same exact playbook. Remdesivir is the only approved treatment at this point. It's incredibly toxic. It causes, multiple organ failures, and people get it. A lot of them get worse and die, and and that's the thing. And they even put the same person in charge of it, Fauci. It's the same.
It is amazing how history repeats itself, isn't it? It also was interesting to me in that vein.
Whoops.
And then I'm probably my internet. Am I out?
Yeah, you just came back.
I just came back. Okay. Hopefully this seems to be a little bit of a bad connection. Yeah, in that vein of what, sort of history repeating itself, cycles, right? Everything repeating itself. It definitely was interesting to me, the idea that the serpent, and I don't even necessarily, I mean, the biblical serpent absolutely ties into it. And so does, the reptilian idea and like all this kind of stuff that we're dealing with, that there could be, something physical taken from a serpent that's being, introduced into the human population. Fascinating. I have no comment on this video as far as real, not real, any of that stuff. I haven't even watched it yet. At some point I'll probably formulate some thoughts about it, maybe. but definitely an interesting theory. Yeah, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I take issue a little bit with something you mentioned to me before the show. I'd love to get your thoughts on it. I know, like, okay, so when this whole thing happened, right? And I'll censor my language here a little bit just in case we try to keep it on YouTube. But when this whole thing happened, I did some research. A lot of that research actually was your father. I've told this story before, but it reintroduced me to like you and your dad, right? Like I'm watching a video and some guy's talking and he's making a lot of sense, and I'm listening to the video, and then I'm looking closer because it wasn't like a shot of his head or anything. Looking closer and I'm like, that's Asher's dad, right? And I start researching. I hadn't researched stuff in years because once you get the story, you've got it. There's nothing else to, like, you got to live your life. You got to do the things you're into. You can't spend all day at the computer, descending into the dark stories that are out there, right? So I hadn't researched stuff in years. This I needed to understand a little bit. So I'm doing that. And I'm sort of, I'm introduced to this whole thing through that. Okay. Then I don't have any sort of personal experiences. Hold on one second. I don't have any personal experiences with whatever this thing is, right? I didn't, quote unquote, get it. Never got sick, I should say. I didn't have anything abnormal that I experienced personally. Now, I have countless friends and people I know who have had very unusual, very abnormal health experiences in the last couple of years. And these are not people who have taken any medical options. Sorry, one more second.
Experimental medical procedures.
Right. These are these are not subjects of experimental medical procedures. These are people who would be on our side of that conversation. And their experiences are really fascinating, right? People who have kind of had all the symptoms, right? That you would have heard about on TV, that you would have read about, and things like that. So I can't discount those, right? I can't, because those are personal, anecdotal stories from people I know and trust. So I can't discount those, and there's been too many of them. Like, it's not something where I can say, oh, it's 1, it's 2, it's 3. No, it's like 30, it's 20, 30, so it's a large number of people in my more or less inner circle. That, I have a friend and his family where, they go home, they were in Ecuador, they go home to Chicago, and they practically died. I mean, it was like this unbelievable experience where it was like one family member and then another and another. And, and their kids are in the hospital, and or not the hospital. I don't remember. It's a whole story, but that's just an example, right? My daughter's mother is another example. And I'm asking, I'm curious, right? I want to probe and understand a little bit. I'm asking about the symptoms. I'm asking about this and that. It does seem different. Like, it doesn't seem like, just your what people refer to as a cold or what people refer to, as a flu. It seems different. Now, again, I don't have any idea. Like I don't have any idea, right? I do prescribe to your father and others' theory. I don't think that this is a viral infection, so to speak, right? I don't prescribe to that. I don't know what it is. Obviously, the frequency stuff to me is really interesting. There's a lot of evidence there. Here's another theory now that's been posited, right, that I have not really looked into. I don't know. But I do feel like, and I think you have said this before actually too, so I do feel like people are getting sick in new ways. And as you mentioned, that playbook, right, of sort of the cure being the pathogen, for lack of a better word, right? The cure being the thing, the damaging thing. We've seen that playbook over and over again. So I guess from your perspective, does this documentary, is it one of those things that gets a lot right, but then leads you astray? Was that sort of how you would look at it, similar to an Alex Jones or things like that, or do you, like, how do you, and also on top of that, like, how do you look at what's going on, as far as, are people getting sick and dying in larger numbers? Obviously they are now, and we understand why that would be. But even prior to that, like how do you look at all that?
Yeah. So first, regarding the documentary, so yes, they do get a substantial number of things correct, but then the ultimate point of it, or the ultimate conclusion that they draw, in my view, is incorrect, and is serving an agenda. For them, it's clicks, and I think Artis is selling a product from this. I think he's selling like clean water or something like that. And I don't have anything against clean water. I think it's very important to have clean water, and I'm going to show some stuff about the water supply shortly. But yeah, it was one of those things where it's like they present some true information, especially in the beginning when they're talking about remdesivir, and they're drawing the connections between Fauci and remdesivir and the pharmaceutical industry, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, they do get some things right, especially in the beginning, and that is I don't know their internal motivations, but it's a trick to get people to say, to bring their guard down, because like in the beginning they say yes, and it's all stuff that we already know. We already know about remdesivir. We already know about a lot of the stuff that they talked about. So it wasn't bringing anything new to the table, especially if you're, watching our show, or, more or less on this side of things. But it's just the leaps in logic that they take to say, well, it must be then snake venom, because this is what, Artis is selling a virus cocktail. So, and also like just the way he talked about things. I mean, he has this sort of savior complex, and he's crying, and he's, it just was too much. It looked like overacting, to be honest. But then, so that's regarding the documentary. Then regarding the, yes, people are getting sick in new and strange ways, and one of the markers of this, or the commonalities of some of the symptoms, or some of the things that people were experiencing, was like a disintegration of the lung tissue, and just their lungs were essentially gone. And I think that's fairly consistent with the 5G theory. I think it's, that is a new toxin that everyone's being exposed to, and your body tries to flush out those toxins and get rid of them and all that stuff, and in doing so, it presents some symptoms, and that's what we think of when we think of sick. But what's really happening is your body is trying to get rid of the toxins. If you have a toxic overload, or you're not regularly detoxing from all the poisons that you're subject to, whether it's in the food, in the water, or radiation, or whatever, then you are going to get sick. You're going to experience some symptoms, and we call that sickness. So in that case, the new stuff that people are getting sick, which I think was only a small percentage of people, that was caused not by any injection, and not by any sort of it was in the beginning, because after the beginning, once they roll out the fear porn, and the lockdowns, and the shutdowns, and the isolation, and all that stuff, then you've introduced many more variables to the equation about why people would get sick. People are breathing in their carbon dioxide. People are constantly living in fear, their sedentary lifestyle, poor diet, stress, anxiety, all that stuff. That is also going to contribute to people getting sick and bad health outcomes. Then they roll out something else, the following year, and they inject it into people, and that's another thing that's going to exacerbate the situation. So I think it's only a small percentage of the people getting sick in the beginning before you've introduced any of those new variables. And the new variables meaning, the lockdowns, the isolation, the masks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think that's what's really going on. And the newness of, the people that you referenced could easily be explained by, going from Ecuador, where maybe they're not exposed to a whole lot of radiation, to Chicago, where, it's right in the middle. Their bodies aren't used to that. They're not used to dealing with that. They have this toxic overload and they get sick. And I think it's a perfectly logical and reasonable explanation that it was a change in environment to a more toxic environment, and the body is not used to that, gets overloaded, and they exhibit symptoms.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's very coherent, and argument makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, I mean, the other thing too, right, is esoterically, we're in the apocalypse, like we're in the biblical end times. We're in the collapsing of the universes. We're in 0 point time, the time for 0 point, right, to arrive at 0 point. The ascension, like however you want to describe it. We're also in that time, which includes kinds of things, meaning you need a level of spiritual capacity, you need a level of purity in your vessel, you need a level of ability to adapt and to raise your frequency and move it and be able to incorporate these new energies and allow your DNA to do its thing and interact with the frequencies and the energies that are happening, what's going on with the sun, et cetera, et cetera. So on that level, like I attribute a lot of this to just people's bodies dealing with sort of it's checkout time for a lot of people, right? And for those reasons, because they're not choosing that path, right? They're choosing sort of to sort of start the cycle over from my perspective, obviously. But so that's that's really for me sort of on that level of things what I think is happening. I was having this conversation last night with a friend about one of the last people probably on Earth who's still like on the fence. It's really amazing, right? Like, has not taken any experimental medical procedures to date, lives in New York City, somehow has traversed that, including working in health, like in the health industry. Yeah. But is not, I know, but is not like hardcore against anything, right? Like could do it in the future, maybe, right? Like, and so I was having this conversation over the last couple of days, and it's like, it's like to me, right, the experimental medical procedure is just the physical representation of the choice point, right? It's just forcing people into a decision. Which path do you want? Now, we're in a dualistic realm, so I would describe that as up or down, but you don't have to say it that way. It could be left or right. It could be this path or that path, whatever. All roads lead to Rome. We're all in the self-discovery process in this, sort of weird interactive matrix we live in. But, yeah. So it's like, to me, that's kind of esoterically like bigger picture. These are just physical manifestations of these sort of prophesied events and times that we're in. It just happened to manifest that way, right? It was like, okay, all you humans, time's up, right? It's time now. What do we need something to spur on that choice. It manifested this way, right? As this, like, okay, take this shot and sort of sell your soul, like sort of give up your your self authority, your self autonomy, like make all the excuses, say why you had to do it, right? All these kinds of things. Or totally reclaim that and be sovereign, and because you'll have to in order to not take it. So it was just it's sort of manifested that way as the choice point. So those are kind
Yeah. And I do want to, if this is new for people, like, this shouldn't be a shocking thing, but so they are poisoning the water. That is a true thing that they said. And however, it's not snake venom, it's fluoride. So here's from the CDC. So we know we can trust it because it's the CDC. So community water fluoridation. Many research studies have proven the safety and benefits of fluoridated water. For 75 years, people in the United States have been drinking water with added fluoride and enjoying the benefits of better dental health. Now here we go. Same, so now we're seeing, so here is dental fluorosis, which is, decay and white spots on the teeth due to ingesting too much fluoride. And according to the CDC right here, 41% of American adolescents now have some form of fluorosis, an increase of over 400% from rates found 60 years ago. And that's according to the CDC itself in 2010. So on one hand, the CDC is saying that drinking fluoridated water keeps teeth strong and reduces cavities by 25%. And then on the other hand, we have the CDC saying that dental fluorosis is up 41% of American adolescents have some form of dental fluorosis, an increase of 400% over the last 60 years. So, so number one, both of those statements can't be true. We can't have, dental fluorosis up over 400% in the last 60 years, and drinking fluoridated water keeps teeth strong and reduces cavities by 25%. So we know that they're adding fluoride to the water. Fluoride I think it's a substance found in nature. However, the fluoride that they're putting into the municipal water supply is a byproduct of, the chemical fertilizer industry. Pretty sure that's right.
I think it's I want to say that it's partly comes from like a byproduct of the metal processing product,
or
like steel or something like that, or maybe aluminum.
Regardless, it's not good. Don't.
No, it's not good. Well, I mean, even
good.
going back to that stuff, which neither you or I have looked at in close to 15 years probably, but going back to that for a second, my understanding is that it was classified as such a hazardous waste chemical that it's so difficult to dispose of because of how dangerous it is, that they're like, what do we do with this stuff? Like we can't let's just put it in the water supply, right? Yeah. So obviously there was more nefarious stuff going on there, but yeah, it's it's a very, very toxic and dangerous chemical. Like I don't think you can just buy it and do stuff with it, probably because it's probably a controlled substance in that way, right? I don't think they sell it on Amazon.
No, you can't buy it on Amazon, because then you might have to dispose of it, and it's a toxic waste. And yes, you won't be able to dispose of it easy. But if you put it in the drinking water, then municipalities will pay you for it. So just a quick overview, and I'm sure we're going to leave out a bunch of stuff, but dangers of fluoride exposure: weakened skeletal health, causes arthritis, toxic to the thyroid, calcifies the pineal gland, accelerates female puberty. We've certainly seen that accelerate and seen young girls reach puberty at lower and lower ages, and I'm sure the hormones in the meats and all that stuff contributes to that as well. Harmful to male and female fertility, bad for kidney health, harmful to the cardiovascular system, and negative cognitive effects. And we've seen another children living in highly fluoridated areas have up to 5 times greater chance of developing a low IQ compared to those who do not. And I would say, if you look at the average intelligence of people over time in the last, decade over decade, year over year, it is going down. It's dropping. So, and then there's obviously wider implications of that. But so I say all that to say that, you do need to be careful about the water you drink. The most municipal water supplies have been poisoned with fluoride, and there's also studies that show that there are pharmaceutical drugs in the groundwater and in the municipal water. So, obviously there's easy ways for that to get into the supply. People taking drugs and then peeing, goes through your system, you pee it out, goes through the sewer into the wastewater, which gets funneled back into the drinking water after they supposedly clean it and all that stuff. And then it gets into our drinking water. And other ways, people are flushing pills down, expired pills and whatnot. And so you have fluoride and pharmaceuticals in the drinking water. And yeah, you need to be careful about the water that you're drinking and bathing in. So yeah, and it's not snake venom, but there's definitely bad stuff in the water. Ruth says aluminum production. Yeah, so right.
Fun times.
Yeah, Bob and Ann says we had a patient who worked for the water sanitation department, and he said the fluoride comes from China, and that there are all kinds of substances that are not dissolved that they had to get rid of. So that's a little fun fact for everyone. I highly recommend people drink purified, have some sort of water filtration system. The bottled water is not good. I mean, you have, I think it's, what is it? Dasani or something like that. It's just tap water from Atlanta. I'm not sure that it's filtered or anything like that. And it's also in plastic. So you have all kinds of issues with consuming things that are touching plastic. And so, the documentary, while missing the ultimate point, it does give us a little reminder to make sure that we're drinking clean water and taking care of our health. But as far as the fear and all that stuff goes, no, nothing's changed. We still need to drink clean water, eat clean food, take care of our health, exercise, ground on the earth, get sunshine, all that stuff. Nothing's changed because of that documentary.
Yeah, so I do a number of YouTube stuff for our real estate company here, and we were recording a podcast the other day, and it was about, there was an article, a local article, right, that was talking about how Ecuador, it was actually in 2017, but they had increased the gap between life expectancy in Ecuador versus the United States. So Ecuadorians are living longer than people in the US. And I actually read the article, which is rare for me. And I saw that the life expectancy in the US dropped by right around 2 years over the last couple of years, like the last 2 or 3 years. The average life expectancy has dropped around 2 years on average. Now, I'm not a huge statistics guy. I did take some statistics classes back in the day, in college and in graduate school. So I know enough to be dangerous, but I think that a 2-year drop in average, that is massive. Like the amount of, that is massive. We're talking, orders of magnitude type changes here in a very short period of time. So if you're looking for, if you're looking for evidence, right, that the die-off is on, or that, or that there's deleterious things to your, causing health, being introduced into the human population, causing health challenges, it's in the numbers, right? It's in the statistics. And obviously, if you come down on the where you and I come down, we're thinking, hey, some of these experimental procedures, may have some longer term issues that cause, things to play out more slowly, right? I'm obviously talking a little bit coded here. So that's interesting to me. Yeah, I mean, as far as, I think, again, going back to sort of the spiritual esoteric side of it, a lot of this to me is, it's a right. So we're in a dualistic realm, and it's sort of a, it's a play like this, right? It's kind of a yin yang idea. There has to be balance to some degree. And what I think that the dark, quote unquote, dark or negative, quote unquote, again, side of things does, like their role spiritually, esoterically, like their role is to push us to the next level, right? That's like the role they're playing. And so if you look at it, it's like one reaction could be to the stuff we're talking about, right? Hey, don't do this, right? This is dangerous, that's dangerous. Now, all that stuff is completely true. One reaction to that could be, oh my gosh, the world's so scary. Look at all this stuff they're doing. I don't know how to protect myself. I better go into fear and worry about all of this, right? And now, don't get me wrong. I take all kinds of precautions, right? Like I try to eat, I try to eat as much of organic as I possibly can. I try to cut plastic out as much as I can. I have stupid little EMF stickers on my phones. I unplug the Wi-Fi at night. I'm building a house that'll be wired so it wouldn't have Wi-Fi. Like I do a few of those things, whatever I can, right? I wear stuff to, things like that, right? So there's nothing wrong with, sort of trying to do things that could help your health in those kinds of ways. But the whole like, you don't want to get lost in that world either, right? Of sort of having a boogeyman out there that you have to protect yourself from. So that would be sort of one reaction. The other reaction I think that is maybe more interesting is, with every new potentially dangerous thing, potentially damaging thing, yes, people are going to get sick from them and leave the planet. Again, that's prophecy. There's no way around that. However, for other people in that sort of dance, it's a push to increase the capacity of the human machine, right? The human sort of operating system. That's a popular thing these days, right? It's to sort of allow the human mechanism, the human computer to go to the next level, because it has to survive, right? So if there's a new frequency that's being emitted, or if there's a new this or a new that or a new this or a new that, we have to, as humans, be able to evolve quickly, right, to that point where we can transmute that, where we can take that from one form and transmute it into something else, where we can still be healthy and still be ascending in the vibrational sense, while they're doing all their weirdness. And what does that do for us? It's like a training program. It's like a learning tool, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to put you in this circumstance, and you go and you see if you can, because if you figure that out, then you're on the next level, right? So the way like I experience this is that as all this stuff happens, I worry about it less and less, like as all of, because it's a foregone conclusion, right? And I know ultimately it's sort of driving me into my faith too, of knowing that this is a temporary experience, right? The human body doesn't last forever. And so that's kind of fun too, from that perspective, because then it's a little bit more of a game. It makes it a little bit, there's a little bit less weight, right? Less sort of pressure, because at the end of the day, we're all just kind of going through this simulation type deal. and try and figure it out the best we can. And it's a fun time to be doing that, right? So it's like, for me, it's like, well, everything's breaking down. We're in the sort of biblical end times. We're in the Greek sense of the word apocalypse. We're in the confluence of prophecy. Let's create, let's do bigger and bigger and bigger. Let's take these energies that are here now in this opening, in this window, in this time, and let's go as big as we can, right? Like that's kind of my mindset. Because at the end of the day, we're free, right? At the end of the day, we're free on earth. We are free. And so, I want to get to the point, and I'm kind of at the point where, you just laugh at them. You just smile at them. You just, okay, you're doing that, right? You're over there doing that. All right. They don't really have any power ultimately because they're capped, right? There's a certain level they can't rise above. So if you're way, way, way above that level, they just look at you and they're like, whoa. and that's it. There's not really much there's nothing they can do. So I don't know. That's how I come down.
No, it's an opt-in game. You have to opt into their system. You have to opt into taking their medical procedure. You have to opt into wearing the mask. You have to do it to yourself, or you have to do it to your fellow man, and that's how they get you. And I think that ultimately the end game is to try to force you to opt in. Making it more and more difficult for you to opt out. And whether that's through supply chain disruptions, like Bob and Ann referenced in the chat. She said Shanghai is a major supply port. Get ready for more supply chain issues and higher inflation. So yeah, I mean, we've been talking about that since the beginning. We've been talking about the decreasing value of the fiat currencies, whether it's the dollar or any other fiat currency. It's just going to be able to buy less and less goods. It's going to be, universal basic income, all the trinkets and shiny objects that they dangle in front of you to be part of their system. And that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. Are you going to take the ticket and join that system and hook yourself up to the cloud and everything else? Hook yourself up to all your devices, and when all your so that's the game. And if you know that and are doing things to prepare yourself to get less dependent on the system, to get less dependent on that, then the transition to a more sovereign, more self-reliant way of life is going to be that much easier. So that's what this show it has been about since the beginning. And I think the documentary that we were referencing was an attempt to put people in that fear state, which, if you're in that fear state, you are much more likely to be deceived and to, go along to get along, because, when people are afraid, they're not making the most sound, rational decisions that they could be. And so I think that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. I don't know much about artists or Stu Peters. I don't know much about that. Yeah, Marcus says, own nothing and you'll be happy. Yep, there you go. So
yeah, and that's our guy, Marcus. What's up, Marcus? We went to high school with Marcus. Big shout out to Marcus. Hope you're doing well. I guess are you still in the Boston area, man? How are you surviving that?
Yeah, how do you live in Boston? Yeah, Darren says 900 a month if you're part of the Rainbow Flag Coalition. So that's not discriminatory about anything. Well, I guess they've had it harder. So I guess
yeah, they have.
Yeah, right. That's
I couldn't help myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Bob and Ann says fiat means by it's a nightmare, guys. Yeah, I can't imagine. I last time I was in Boston was it was around Thanksgiving of 2020. So, yeah, Marcus, where are you looking? Where are you looking? He says he's trying to get out. Yeah, so November 2020, and so it was Thanksgiving, and I basically just stayed at the place where I was staying. It was my sister-in-law's, so I didn't really venture out anywhere. If someone had to go to the store, my wife would, and you know, oh yeah, she's not as stringent about the mask as I am. So
Ah,
you know,
right,
and
right, right.
you just even stopping on the highway to get gas. Um, does New Hampshire really love freedom? I'm not so sure about that. I think New Hampshire is, yeah. I mean, you got to get out of the cities, like away. And so my brother is in Maine. Um, it's not great up there either. And yeah,
I'm
so
gonna have to
anyway,
jump out of here, Ash. You guys are welcome, obviously, to keep going. Marcus, again, man, great to chat with you for a minute. Hope you're doing well. And yeah, I think are we going tomorrow? I can go if you can at the semi normal time here of let's see, 9:45
yeah,
Eastern, right? 8:45 my time. So anyways, I'm gonna run
yeah.
out of here, guys. Thanks again for joining, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Yeah. Yeah, Marcus, the whole Northeast, I mean, it's basically like red states versus blue states. The whole Northeast kind of sucks. I mean, yeah, I'm in North Carolina. I haven't had to deal with almost any of that nonsense. And I don't know how far away you're looking to move, but Tennessee is a really good option. Florida. North Carolina's okay. I would probably put North Carolina in like, 15 to 20, like in terms of top states. It's not like in the top 10 of states to be, but it's not in the bottom half. I think it's more or less, like 15, 20-ish in terms of best states to be. Um, yeah, yeah. So, anyways, those wokeism, yeah, need to get away from it. Love Florida as well. Was there 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Florida is a good place. Obviously you have a life up there. Um, but yeah, I would encourage you to look further out. But obviously, we haven't really talked, in a long time. But yeah, it's just I don't know. It was crazy up there when I went there. I haven't been to the Northeast since November 2020. I did a tour of like upstate New York to stay with my dad, Maine to stay with my brother, then down to the Boston area to stay with my sister-in-laws, and then back down to North Carolina after that. So I did not like being there. The whole culture and the strictness and lockdowns and all that stuff. I was not feeling that. So anyways, it was great chatting with everyone. Marcus, good to hear from you. Join us again, obviously. It's always good to hear from you. And so, yeah, we'll most likely be back tomorrow morning, and we'll talk to you later.